Welcome to a recording of the Delivering Modern Manufacturing Through a Skilled Workforce 2020 Budget Initiatives webinar, jointly hosted by National Skills Developers, the IBSA Group, and Peak National Employer Organisation, AI Group, with Senator Michaelia Cash, Minister for Employment, Skills, Small and Family Business.
Throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging and extend that. A special welcome to our keynote speakers, Senator the Honourable Michaelia Cash, Minister for Employment, Skills, Small and Family Business. Minister, thanks for being so generous with your valuable time today. I welcome fellow board members of IBSA and members of our manufacturing industry reference committees who are charged with delivering skills qualifications with IBSA's support. Participants in our webinar represent a diverse range of manufacturing businesses right across Australia this morning, and thank you for your time this Friday morning. Also with us today are Lilly, who's Head of Education and Training with AI Group, and Sharon Robertson, CEO of IBSA Group, who will be our MC for this morning's session. So over to you, Sharon.
Thank you, Graham, and may I also add my welcome and thank you to the Minister and everyone participating in this morning's event. It's great to be joined by what we're hoping to be over 150 senior executives who represent organisations providing tremendous support to the manufacturing industry. I'd also like to welcome members of the media. With so many people on the call, just a couple of, I suppose, housekeeping. We've unfortunately had to mute everybody and we've also disabled the chat function. If you are having any technical difficulties, please contact Stephanie and her details were provided in the event confirmation email. Certainly for me, and I'm sure for all of you, these type of events provide us with an excellent opportunity to better understand government policy and priorities so that we can work together to ensure that the workforce has the skills required to meet the needs of industry. Effective collaboration is what it's all about, and it's effective collaboration between employers, employees, the training sector and government, which is vital to the recovery and growth of manufacturing. IBSA has been working collaboratively with industries to support manufacturing skills development, including the recent creation of COVID point of care skills testing skills set, which was needed to meet the massive demand earlier this year. The format of the events today as follows. Shortly, I will formally introduce the Minister. After the Minister's speech, there will be a facilitated Q&A from the numerous questions that were received when people registered. At 11:45, the Minister has to unfortunately leave, but we will then progress to the second part of our webinar, where we'll hear from Lilly to provide further analysis on how we can take manufacturing skills forward for the Australian industry. And certainly we promise to try and stay on track and make sure that we're finished at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Senator the Honourable Michaelia Cash is the Minister for Employment, Skills, Small and Family Business. She has previously held various portfolio roles, including Minister for Jobs and Innovation and Minister for Women. As a Senior Minister of Cabinet, she has been the leading force behind the government's plans to grow employment and to help ensure employers and industries have the right skills needed for Australia's future economic prosperity, particularly as we come out of the COVID pandemic. Minister, we so look forward to hearing more about the Commonwealth's recent announcements in the manufacturing strategy, the job trainer and the apprenticeship incentives. Importantly, we really value your thoughts and how these and other budget initiatives will help industry develop that necessary resilience and deliver the workforce skills required to ensure that Australia succeeds into a sustainable future. I'd now like to hand over to Minister Cash.
Sharon, good morning, and good morning to everybody joining us today. It is my absolute pleasure to be part of this video conference, and in particular to talk to you about, that the fantastic future that manufacturing does have in Australia, and in particular with Minister Andrews' announcement of the $1.5 billion modern manufacturing strategy, but also something that I think that is dear to all of our hearts and I'm incredibly passionate about, and that is, of course, that skilled workforce that you all need. Sharon, can I also, though, thank, of course, Megan Lilly, Peter Constantini and Graham Russell, to IBSA and to AI Group. Thank you very much for co-hosting this event, but bringing so many people from across diverse industry networks together. So, ladies and gentlemen, we've had the budget handed down for the 2020-2021 financial year. I'm absolutely delighted to tell you that the investment in skills alone this year is almost $7 billion. That is the greatest investment, as many of you would know, that any government has ever made in skills. And I will take you through elements of that package shortly. But also, in October, the Prime Minister, when he was at the National Press Club, he spoke about introducing the Australian government's modern manufacturing strategy. And I just want to quote to you what the Prime Minister said at the time. He said, the objective is to build scale and capture income in high value areas of manufacturing where Australia either has established competitive strength or emerging priorities. And I recall a number of the conversations that I've had with many of you now over a long period of time. And this is very much the message that you had been giving us. And then, of course, Minister Andrews, she announced the modern manufacturing strategy and, of course, the investment the government will be making of $1.5 billion over 4 years. And for each and every one of us, that now just presents us with so many opportunities that we're able to harness within manufacturing in Australia. Just in terms of the key elements of the modern manufacturing strategy, as you would know, we have announced that it will support 6 national manufacturing priorities: resources technology and critical minerals, processing, food and beverage, medical products, recycling and clean energy, defence, and I have to say something that's very dear to my heart as a former minister, and that is, of course, the space industry. So when you look at those priorities, those 6 areas, that really is where Australia and Australians have established either competitive strength or they are those emerging priorities. We also have, though, as you know, the government's supply chain resilience initiative. And again, so many of us have talked about that for some time now. That's going to invest in excess of $100 million over 4 years to help position Australia to better respond to future crises. COVID-19 has taught us a lot. And that being able to respond efficiently and effectively going forward is going to be so important to so many of us. And of course, round 2 of the highly popular and successful Manufacturing Modernisation Fund and a funding extension to 4 of the industry growth centres. So in terms of that modern manufacturing strategy, there is so much opportunity now that I want to see us harness together. But in particular, in terms of boosting the capability of Australia's manufacturers to scale up, compete internationally, and to create jobs, that investment, and I know, and thank you for the feedback from so many of you, really is going to create that opportunity going forward. But what we also need to do together, the skilled workforce. I heard loudly and clearly when I first met with you all a number of years ago now, when I came into the portfolio, that need for a skilled workforce within Australia. What did you tell us? You told us that employers need the government to deliver to them via vocational education and training the right skilled workers for the jobs that they have. And that is, you know, is exactly what we are doing in terms of completely transforming vocational education and training in Australia. Last year, we went to the election. with that $585 million commitment to each and every one of you, that we would transform vocational education and training in Australia so that industry, the job creators in Australia, would be at the heart of this policy, and so that we would have a clear understanding of what the labour market is telling us are the jobs, not just now, as you know, but projecting out into the future, and that the system would then deliver for the learners, the employers, and ultimately all Australians. So we took that $585 million commitment to the election, and it was endorsed by the Australian people. And since that time, we have literally not stopped. And I really do just want to pause here and thank IBSA and AI Group for working with me each and every step of the way to ensure that we had the feedback from on the ground that we needed. Vocational education and training is a partnership. And it's not just a partnership between the Commonwealth states and territories. It's a partnership between governments across Australia and industry. Because if we're not delivering for you, you can't deliver for the Australian people by way of job creation. And so since the election, we have now invested almost $7 billion, as I said, in the VET system. And that is, I'm so pleased to say to you, the biggest investment on record. So what are we doing? Okay. As you'd know, COVID-19 just absolutely transformed the Australian labour market. And so in the first instance, we obviously put in place the Supporting Apprentices and Trainees Wage Subsidy. Who are the first people to go in any recession? Apprentices and trainees. The government acted as quickly as we could, and we put in place that 50% wage subsidy to ensure that you're able to keep apprentices and trainees in training. So in total, as you know, because we extended it in July to also include not just small businesses, but small and medium-sized businesses. As at the 22nd of October 2020, the Supporting Apprentices and Trainees measure has now provided in excess of $615 million in payments to over 54,000 employers. And I thank you, because that means you are now supporting around 95,000 existing apprentices and trainees to stay on the job. And those figures do not take into account those that are being supported by JobKeeper. So I really do thank you for the efforts that you have made to keep your apprentices and trainees on the job. But in my discussions with you, what was so important as we emerged from COVID was giving you that ability to bring new apprentices and trainees on. Fantastic that you can support existing apprentices and trainees, but I heard loudly and clearly you needed the government to assist you to bring those new apprentices and trainees on. So the $1.2 billion 50% wage subsidy to encourage the 100,000 new commencements. If anybody needs any further information on that, businesses of any size, in any geographic location, in any industry across Australia, I've made it as broad as possible. Please call me and I will ensure that you have that information, because this is just so important for the manufacturing sector. You are a sector that absolutely needs those apprentices and trainees, and this will give you that ability to bring someone new on into your organisation. We also announced, though, the $1 billion Job Trainer Fund. The key to this was working with the states and territories to not just provide that up to an additional 340,000 training places across Australia. I mean, that's fantastic, as you know. An additional up to 340,000 training places across Australia is a good thing. But again, unless they are in areas of demand, it's not going to mean a lot to you. So as you know, we insisted that those training places be in areas of demand in states and territories. We have worked with the individual states and territories through Adam Boyton, as many of you know, the National Skills Commissioner in Australia. He has just done outstanding work with our states and territories on the ground. I am pleased to advise you that many said it couldn't be done. Every single state and territory has signed up to Job Trainer, and in fact, in my home state of Western Australia, I'm very pleased to tell you this, and in South Australia, they have already released, I can see Peter Constantini smiling there, they have already released their initial lists of qualifications to be funded under Job Trainer, because remember, Job Trainer provides free or low cost training. And the low cost is because there's a regulatory requirement to pay something. But essentially, free qualifications to Australians in areas of demand. And in terms of South Australia and Western Australia, I'm actually pleased to tell you both states are funding a range of qualifications and courses relating to manufacturing, free courses, such as a Certificate 3 in process manufacturing. And again, if anybody would like further information on those lists, I'm happy to work with you, and we will be working with the additional states and territories also to have their lists released as soon as possible. And I am conscious of time, but there is so much in this space. As you would also know, again, through the conversations that we had when I first came into the portfolio, the system was not delivering to you what you needed. There is no point in the Commonwealth putting $1.5 billion every single year of your money into a system by the National Agreement on Skills and Workforce Development, and the states and territories not having no KPIs. I mean, your business people, can you imagine giving over money every single year and having no KPIs associated with it, other than the broad heading of it must be spent on vet? I mean, seriously, that's why the system wasn't delivering. I was determined to reform this system, and as you know, all states and territories via the National Cabinet have now signed on to the Heads of Agreement for Skills Reform. That is a huge thing. You're in this space. Many Australians will not appreciate how revolutionary this is, and we now have a 12-month time frame in which to deliver a new funding agreement, and it's an agreement that the Prime Minister has said, if we're getting better value from vocational education and training in Australia, that's a system the Commonwealth will happily invest more money in. Very quickly, what have we committed to as states and territories in the Commonwealth for each and every one of you? Short-term reforms, simplifying, rationalising and streamlining national vet qualifications across industry occupation clusters and the AQF, and introducing improved industry engagement arrangements. Big tick there, all agreed. And of course, strengthening quality standards, building registered training organisations' capacity and capability for continuous improvement, and developing a vet workforce quality strategy. There are short-term reforms. What are we talking about in the terms of the longer reform? You'll be very pleased with this one, simplifying the vet system and making it more responsive to skills needs. How revolutionary is that? We'll talk about that in a minute. And that includes getting rid of the NASWAD and replacing it with a new funding agreement that delivers for learners, trainers and employers. Improving national consistency for students, linking funding with efficient pricing and the skills needed for employers, developing and funding nationally accredited micro-credentials. Many of you have spoken to me about that, and individual skill sets and supporting lifelong learning through an integrated tertiary and vet system, promoting apprentices and other employment-based training, strengthening vet pathways for secondary school students, working with the National Careers Institute to actually promote vet throughout Australia, enhancing transparency and accountability, and increasing real investment in vet. But that comes with the agreement to undertake those reforms. Very briefly, and then I will wrap up, the National Skills Commission. Thank you all for your feedback when we first established it. I do appreciate it. We managed to get the legislation through the Parliament, and as you know, I announced a few weeks ago, Adam Boyton has now formally been appointed as Australia's first National Skills Commissioner. He is doing an outstanding job, and I know he works closely and takes feedback from many of you. The key work the National Skills Commission is doing is this, and again I heard loudly and clearly from you when we first talked a long time ago now, developing closer to real-time data on the labour market, working with the states and territories to get that right. As you all know, currently it looks backwards. That does not assist you. That does not assist you. It needs to look forward, and that is what Adam is doing, drawing on emerging data sets such as single touch payroll to flag emerging skill shortages and other labour market trends and pressures. Obviously looking at the vet pricing system, the performance of our vet system, and working through the National Careers Institute. But I think from your perspective, that developing closer to real-time data on the labour market to then inform the way we fund the vet system and the qualification development that you are telling us you need is just so important. So, ladies and gentlemen, there is so much happening in this space, but the good news is it's not just happening. The states and territories and the Commonwealth have signed the Heads of Agreement for Skills Reform. I now have a 12-month window in which to deliver for National Cabinet. I can tell you right now, I will deliver. The states and territories are working very well with us in this regard. The fact that they all signed up to Job Trainer, given they had to commit to this reform to get Job Trainer, tells you they are all serious. This is real reform. It's also funded reform, $7 billion this year alone. And all I can say is thank you so much for everything you have done, continue to do. But more than that, I know that you will continue to do to ensure that our manufacturing sector harnesses those opportunities presented by the Modern Manufacturing Strategy. But more than that, that you can now work with a vet system that is delivering for you what you need so we can deliver for all Australians. And on that, I'm sure we can now open the floor to questions.
Thank you so much, Minister. And look, I'm sure I'm speaking on behalf of everyone. We're really looking forward to the skills reform you've outlined and totally agree that we want to do everything we can to harness these opportunities together. Because I speak on everyone, manufacturing can't grow without a skilled workforce. If recent times have shown us anything, it is the speed with which we need to provide these skills that is so vitally important to ensure that we have the resilience of the workforce going forward. Minister, we've received so many questions and I'm not sure we'll get time to go through them all today. And also wanted to call out that we've had a lot of interest in this event through our social media channels. To minimise the technical glitches, I'd love for everyone to be able to share their questions with you, but we thought it'd be best if I actually read them out. I'll certainly attribute where this come from and then throw to you. But before I dive in, I wanted to ask one ourselves.
Okay.
Okay,
I'm ready.
You're ready? Okay, so with the government work, and look, it's fantastic to see the commitment on the 6 national manufacturing priorities. And we really think that a skilled workforce is going to be critical. How can you advise us, IBSA and the employees here today, that we can support your department in this initiative? What can we do to help?
In the first instance, what I'd say is the $1.2 billion that we have invested to create those new 100,000 apprenticeships and traineeships. Could you please make sure everybody knows about it? Because if they have that capacity to bring on a new apprentice or trainee, sign them up tomorrow, okay? So in the first instance, we can work together to bring new apprentices and trainees into our system, which, as you know, is just so important for that skilled workforce in the pipeline going forward. But what I would also say is, so IBSA and the industry reference committees that IBSA supports, and as you know, that is such a fundamental role within vocational education and training. You play a crucial role in developing national training packages, and as we know, Australian workers will they continue to need to be able to access high quality, relevant Relevant is a key word here, and forward-looking training, which meets the needs of both the workers and the manufacturing industry. So I would strongly encourage IBSA to continually, and you do this already, but continue to engage widely with industry stakeholders to ensure that industry's views are heard, but also, and as you know, because you already do this well, provide timely advice to government. If you want us to know something, my mobile phone, you pick up the phone and you talk to me. You provide that advice to me. I want you to do that. That's why we all have such a good relationship. As a government, we need that timely advice, but also providing that advice through to the Australian Industry and Skills Committee. What does that do? It ensures that we're all on the same page. And I go back to those key words, relevant training, relevant and forward-looking training. We need to know from you what you are seeing on the ground, those emerging trends, and do we have the capability to respond to it? So thank you for that opportunity, Sharon. I do appreciate it.
Thank you, Minister. The next question that I wanted to play back to you is from Fiona McDonald. Now, Fiona McDonald is the Managing Director for Tradeswomen Australia Foundation, and her question reads, Minister Cash, the government is to be congratulated for helping build the Australian recovery through investment in construction and infrastructure. However, we all know that women are significantly underrepresented in the trades, which will be utilised during this rebuilding of our economy. In your view, is it important to engage women in the recovery? And how would you best invest in women for trade careers during this opportunity?
And thank you. And can I just acknowledge Fiona and all of the work she does, because you know that I'm very passionate about getting more women into trade because of the opportunities that are afforded. And when you look at the 6 priority areas in terms of the $1.5 billion modern manufacturing strategy, what opportunities there are for women. In the first instance, I'd say this. Prior to COVID, we had near record female participation in the workforce. That is a very, very good thing. Obviously, women were hit hard by COVID, but we are now seeing that situation rectify itself. In terms of the 340,000 additional training places via JobMaker, one of the things we've done as the Department of Employment and Skills is we actually did put the gender lens over with the states and territories, the types of courses that needed to be funded. So whilst we haven't specifically said these courses are for women, when you actually look at the mix of courses that have been brought into the fund, you'll very much see that a gender lens has actually been put over it in terms of the free or low cost training. In terms of apprenticeships though, 2 figures. The percentage of women in trade apprenticeships has actually been steadily increasing. So congratulations to employers on this call. 16.4% in March 2011 to 26.8% in March 2020. So that is a good step in the right direction. However, as we all know, there's way more to be done. But that is why we have such significant investment in either supporting apprentices and trainees. That was actually very important from my perspective. The companies were given that ability to keep their apprentices and trainees on, but in particular for those females who'd finally got that foot in the door, who'd taken up a trade apprenticeship and then COVID hit. It was so important. So even though it wasn't labelled male or female, it was a measure that I looked at very carefully and said, this is something we do need to do to support women to stay in their apprenticeships. And then obviously that additional investment of $1.2 billion to bring on 100,000 new apprentices and trainees. I mean, I have given a very clear signal. I would love to see employers going out and actually bringing on women into those roles. We also, though, do have, say, the National Careers Institute. One of the roles of the National Careers Institute is specifically, and And Fiona knows this actually because she's actually on the National Careers Institute Advisory Board. And this is why we have people like Fiona on this board. It's all about raising the profile of VET, but it's also specifically looking at how to raise the profile of VET for women, including with the partnership that we have supporting and linking tradeswomen, known as SALT, supporting and linking tradeswomen. So what does SALT do? It promotes VET qualifications and career pathways to women to shift those perceptions and to help more women understand the benefits that VET can provide. And we also have, I mean, you've got Fiona sitting there in that advisory role, which is fabulous. But as Fiona also knows, we also have our VET alumni, our Australian VET alumni. We are doing so much more now to promote them because we have some outstanding female role models. So you have your general policies because you actually have put a gender lens over it. So you may not specifically label it, however, and then obviously you have the more specific areas of work that we're doing, and in particular through Fiona and her role on the National Careers Institute Advisory Board, and what we're doing with our partnership with supporting and linking tradeswomen, otherwise known as SALT.
Fantastic. And I think I speak on everyone. The National Careers Institute is something I think is well overdue in the VET sector to really promote some of the great things that are happening.
Thank you.
It's not getting picked up anywhere much as it should. Going to move your mind now. Andrew Peterson, he's the CEO of Business Council for Sustainable Development in Australia and a member of our Sustainability Industry Reference Committee. He's asked the question, what are your thoughts on a government-supported skills passport platform, allowing people as they reskill and retrain as we come out of COVID to record their skills, competencies and knowledge to be seen by a wider pool of employers? I think you've been muted.
Unmute myself. I think what's so refreshing, Sharon, when I hear these questions is that we're actually all on the same page. So in terms of where we're all heading with VET reform, we're all ticking the same boxes and that reform is being done. So in relation to the Skills Passport platform, what are my thoughts? The government, you may or may not be aware, and if you're not, I can get you this information. We recently announced $2.5 million to develop the National Credentials platform. So what we've done here is we've collaborated with Universities Australia, the Universities Admissions Centre and Higher Ed Services to provide, and this is very important, a secure digital platform, because obviously you've got to take into account all of that cyber security that will provide students with access to tertiary education records and achievements. That is obviously higher education. They'll be able to use the platform to access transcripts from 2021, so next year. And then with future phases to include recognition of micro-credentials and general capabilities, providing a more complete picture of each student's unique skills and knowledge. You'll also know that I did a bit of work and we passed some legislation in relation to the unique student identifier system. It's probably not something that most Australians know about. However, when you're actually working in the space, you actually realise just how important the unique student identifier is. And that obviously provides learners with an online record of their training attainment. It already facilitates the sharing of transcripts, which, as you know, is just so important. Because that means job applicants can give that transcript to potential employers and licensing bodies. And what does that allow them to do? Demonstrate prior learning. Students can actually go there and download, print and give permission to a third party to view full or partial transcript online. It gives the ability and choice to provide a partial transcript for particular verification processes, an easier verification of VET qualifications to gain employment sooner, and evidence of training outcomes completed since 2015. So look, in response to that proposition, we're all on the same page, and certainly work is already being done in that space as to where we're all ultimately we all need to get to. It's obviously all about just making it simpler, isn't it? For both the person with the qualifications, the employer who needs to be able to verify that the qualification is correct without actually having to go through a whole lot of red tape.
Couldn't agree more. The simplification and I suppose
absolutely.
National mobility and look, the USI is certainly something a lot of work's gone into, and it'd be great to see that out there more. Then I moved to process manufacturing, and I'm really pleased to hear that South Australia's actually got that on the list. Keith Monaghan's with us today, and he's the chair of our Process Manufacturing Industry Reference Committee. His question was that the government's already announced changes to the industry advisory arrangements for training following the Joyce Review. How do you see these changes aligning with the recent announcements that have been made in terms of the 6 national manufacturing priorities?
Look, and thank you. So it's a very, very important question in terms of that way forward. So just to bring you up to speed as to where we are. So as you know, we had established skills organisation pilots as part of the response to the Joyce Review. And they've been established to trial a new model of industry leadership in the vet sector. So that end-to-end involvement of industry in the development of a qualification. Through my skills ministers and certainly through the heads of agreements, we have all committed to introducing improved arrangements for industry engagement across the vet sector. In terms of the reform work that is being undertaken, the reform work itself is going to obviously learn from what the skills organisation pilots have learnt themselves in terms of optimising the future arrangements, which is very good in terms of the 6 priority areas and getting the qualification development right for those 6 priority areas. And in terms of the Modern Manufacturing Initiative, it's focused on industry-led, innovative approaches to create manufacturing, to grow manufacturing and create jobs. And this already complements what we're doing in the vet space. But just in terms of what has been announced by the Department of Industry separately, they have already said that they are going to be co-designing roadmaps for the national manufacturing priorities with industry. They'll be finalised in the first half of 2021. And how I see it working is literally supporting and informing the work we are doing on the vet reform agenda. So it's literally work that now complements, but is all heading in the direction that we all want to, which is qualifications that actually reflect the jobs that industry are telling us are in the labour market, not just now, but it's that future projection going forward, that emerging trend. This job will be here in 18 months. Right, let's get on to the qualification. So then in 18 months' time, all you're doing is bringing people in and the qualification is already there and ready to go.
My turn, forget to mute. I'm sure all employers would agree at the moment that relevant and forward-looking quals are absolutely so critically important. I'm keeping an eye on the time, but 1 or 2
No, that's okay. Yep.
I'm going to move to training now. Craig Robertson, CEO of TAFE Directors Australia, you probably know him. The recent announcements about Job Trainer represent a significant investment in skills development. How do you see Job Trainer specifically helping manufacturing businesses? You've probably answered that a little bit more, but I don't know if you...
Look, I'm happy to take 2 seconds because this is just a huge achievement to get the states and territories to work together in record time. I think when I approached the states and territories initially and said, I'm proposing a $1 billion fund, the Commonwealth will actually provide $500 million matched by the states and territories. This is what I want you to do. Within 48 hours, I had responses that all of them would be prepared to sign up. I mean, I think Craig, Peter Constantini, you would know that that never ever happens in the vet sector. We're normally having that conversation 3 or 4 years down the track. So the fact that we made an announcement, put up the funding, and we have now worked with the states and territories, and every single one of them have signed up. Victoria was the last, and in fact, most of the states and territories have signed up, as you know, some time ago. Victoria had a number of issues they needed to work through. I'll accept that. They'd always indicated they would get there, and they did. The key to that, as I said, though, is Adam Boyton, the work he's done with the National Skills Commission. It is not 340,000 additional training places. It's the 340,000 additional training places in areas of demand. That is the key. Working with the individual states and territories, allowing them to put forward to us as the Commonwealth what they see in their own labour markets as the emerging areas, so that we are funding that skills pipeline going forward. But as I had said, my own state government in Western Australia and the South Australian governments have publicly released, so we can flick that over to you, Sharon, their initial list of qualifications to be funded. Remember, free, low cost. It's on the MySkills website if anybody wants to Google that. And both states are funding a range of qualifications and courses relating to manufacturing, such as a Certificate 3 in process manufacturing. As more and more are finalised, they will absolutely be made public, so you can go online at any time. But if you would go on now to the MySkills website, you will find Western Australia and South Australia, the list of courses are free or low cost.
Fantastic. And I'm sure everyone is really pleased at the fact that there is some manufacturing quals there, because that's going to be so vitally important. I'm going to squeeze in one more. Are we probably getting close? One more?
Okay, squeeze in one more. Let's do it.
Okay, Ian Curry. Now, he's the National Coordinator of Australian Manufacturing Workers Union, and also our Manufacturing Engineer IRC Chair. His question: what do you consider the greatest risk to delivering the skilled workforce that a modern manufacturing industry will need to succeed? And how do you see government's policies responding to this?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And I remember last year, prior to the election, when we'd announced the $585 million investment, and the fact that we had said we were going to respond to both the Joyce and the Braithwaite review, and that, as you know, if we were elected as a government, we were committed to fundamentally transforming the vocational education and training sector in Australia. And you know, so many people said to me, 110% Michaelia, we are backing you every step of the way. We absolutely agree with everything that you've put forward, with the changes that you've made. But how are you going to do it? It's a shared system. You know, people have tried before, they've never succeeded. And jump forward, and here we are today. I can assure each and every one of you, you have a government and a minister who are absolutely determined to deliver to you the reform that is required. Anyone in the space will know the reform that we have achieved alone since COVID-19 commenced. No one has ever done this before. The fact that we were able to get up the emergency subcommittee in the Australian Industry Skills Council to actually turn around qualifications within a matter of weeks. And if you recall, I announced the funding of 80,000 places in infectious disease control with the states and territories. No, when I said that I was going to do that, the feedback was, you'll never get it done. Well, guess what? No, we did. You know that I'm determined. I don't take no for an answer. But not only that, the Prime Minister's made it clear. This is a skills-led recovery. Full stop. That's it. That's why he has provided us with the funding. And I say us. He's not provided me with the funding. He's provided us collectively with the investment of almost $7 billion, the additional 340,000 training places. You know, the key to the vet reform, when I spoke with the Prime Minister months ago now, was getting National Cabinet to sign on to the heads of agreement. This is a shared space. You need each jurisdiction to come to the table and commit to. It is fundamental reform. So I think from what we've shown we can do to date, the fact that we are now on a pathway for reform, the fact that National Cabinet has made the former COAG skills ministers a formal subcommittee of National Cabinet. I meet every 2 weeks as a National Cabinet with my skills ministers. I mean, the pace at which we are doing this again, has never been seen. So I do give you that commitment. Skills-led recovery, the funding is there, the commitment to the fundamental reform to the sector is there. And it's also not something that we're doing alone as the Commonwealth. I just wouldn't entertain that. This is working together. Commonwealth, states, territories, unions, industry, employers, employees. It is a shared space that must deliver for all. And so while, yes, you are right, it may well be a bumpy road along the way, the end goal is clear. And for the benefit of our economy, this cannot fail.
Minister, that's all we've got time for, I understand. And look, I'm sure I speak on behalf of everyone. Your determination and commitment is certainly going to ensure this reform gets across the line. I have no doubt. Thank you so much for the generosity of your time and your insights on behalf of the IBSA Group and AI Group. We look forward to continuing the conversation. Thank you, and I hope the rest of your day goes well.
Thank you all. Have a wonderful day, everybody, and thank you for the opportunity. See you all.
Now moving to the second part of our webinar this morning, I'd like to invite Megan Lilly. Now, Megan is the head of education and training with AI Group, and certainly our partners in this event. She's going to spend some time with us sharing her insights on what we just heard, which I think was quite, I suppose, broad-ranging and certainly raised a lot of things perhaps we've heard about, some things that we perhaps didn't quite appreciate as much. To support the discussions with Megan, I've actually got a couple of questions I'm going to throw to her. So we might start with the first one, and I suppose the obvious one. Your comments, Megan, on the initiatives that Minister Cash or Senator Cash has just discussed.
So thanks, Sharon, and look, it's great to be part of this webinar, so that's the first thank you. And Minister Cash certainly ranged through a lot of issues, and reform, I think, is probably the way of describing it, which, is really important to discuss, but discuss it in the context of manufacturing, which is the focus of what we're doing here today. And so the government's got two twin strategies. Did I say that? Two strategies happening, one around modern manufacturing, one about skills, and we're talking about the intersection of them. And they actually need to coexist. You can't have one without the other. So they're incredibly important initiatives. From an AI Group employer perspective, we're really delighted to see some of the things that came through in the budget, the modern manufacturing strategy, but certainly the boosting apprenticeship strategy or the commencement strategy. So there was the earlier strategy around supporting apprentices to keep them in the system, and that's when the pandemic first hit, and that was a really important first step, put the floor in. But we argued very strongly to actually work on commencements as well, because we're all really conscious that there's a whole lot of people leaving school, more or less now, and that we can't let them just sort of flounder. But we also know that for the economy and manufacturing to get out of this pandemic or to recover from it, we will need a really solid supply of skilled labour, and we can't afford any disruption to that pipeline. So all of those things kick into that space. There was also in the job maker hiring credit, which is yet to come into play, but that's an employment-based incentive for employers, so that will sort of be another additional important piece. And the Minister talked a lot about job trainers, so I won't go over that, but obviously incredibly important. And the one that probably doesn't get the attention that it should is the FBT on employer-provided retraining and reskilling for redeployed employees. So that sort of removal of the FBT around that, I think something that will also be beneficial to employers. So, there are a lot of budget initiatives that they really, I thought the Minister, I wrote down the words, she talked about it as being a skills-led recovery, and I think that is the right lens to look on all of it, including the budget initiatives and the relationship around manufacturing. And without that focus on skills, it would be very difficult to achieve what we need to achieve in the time we need to achieve it. So I think that is absolutely the critical focus. Huge number of things put down. We'll still need to do more work, more reform, but we're in a great place to start all of that.
And I know, Megan, that AI Group have been doing a lot with businesses to help support them through the challenges of the COVID pandemic. And I certainly agree, skills-led recovery is certainly something that seems to be the focus. What are some of the challenges that you've heard from businesses that they seem to be facing and that we need to think about going forward?
Look, there frankly wouldn't be a business in the country that has not been impacted by COVID in one way or another. I mean, I guess it's just the nature of what that impact looks like, whether it's, some have been positive in the sense that they might be in the right place of a supply chain, perhaps providing PPE or medical supply equipment or whatever, and that's sort of fortuitous in a really dire situation. But everyone's been impacted, but the impact is variable according to where they are in the economy, where they are in terms of geography, where they are in supply chains and all those sorts of things. We've been surveying our members monthly since the pandemic hit, and I guess everyone realised the extent of it, about the impact of it. And, some of the things are sort of fairly obvious in terms of just the major disruption caused by social distancing or in fact closure in some situations. So those sorts of things. But there's no doubt that every company recorded sort of a drop in demand, except those companies I talked about before in that special category. But so not only have people experienced a drop in demand, they've simultaneously experienced increased cost in just going about what they used to do previously. So some of that is to do with social distancing or number of employee restrictions or the impact of PPE, cleaning, all those sorts of things. So there isn't a company that's running the way it used to run. Everyone's running differently, and I think that that's an important point to understand. But one of the upsides, I think that it's important to look at some of the upsides that have come out of this, that is it has actually accelerated our approach to digitalisation. So I think companies were variably on that journey in any case. There's a lot of commentary out there and a lot of business-to-business dialogue and all sorts of things about digitalising supply chains or embarking on your own sort of Industry 4 journey or whatever it was in each and every circumstance. But the pandemic really pushed the acceleration button on that. And in fact, I think it's the McKinsey basically suggests that what companies generally take 3 to 4 years to do in terms of digitalising themselves, they did do it in about 3 to 4 months. And I think that in and of itself is a very interesting thing. Our observation is, and our survey of companies say that, when we're more fully out of this pandemic, whenever that will be, and let's hope it's sort of sooner rather than later, says someone living in Melbourne, that we won't return to where we were before, not only in terms of office type work, but also production-based work and other forms of work, but also the interrelationship between companies and how business is conducted and transacted, and including how skills are developed. And so that we are at a point of change around all of those things. Some of the change has been foisted upon us. And now it's up to us to grab that change and actually turn it into the most productive, effective, successful way going forward in a way that's inclusive and works for everybody, and actually keep the best of it happening and build on it and perhaps challenge some of the other things. But returning to where we've been isn't really going to be an option. I mean, there's been some sort of structural adjustment in the economy as a result of the pandemic in any case, and certainly in the labour market. And I also think one of the things the National Skills Commission, in that data that they released about the 25 emerging occupations, which was actually from 2015 to 2019, so it was pre-pandemic data, but very, very interesting. And one of the things that it clearly identified was the digital deepening that was already occurring in the labour force. So that's been accelerated since then. So I think we've got to grab that and work with that and work with what that means in a really constructive, productive way.
You've touched on, and totally agree, Megan, a lot of changes in the way we work, evidenced by even today, but the acceleration, digitisation, the way we work, logistics and various other things, the use of PPE, they're all mean different things to the way we work. What does it mean, and any thoughts that you have in regards to the changes that are needed in knowledge and skills development? I actually think that whole debate, was a debate, and we saw a lot of shift in that
once again pre-pandemic, and I would be of the view that it's accelerated as a result of it. But and if we focus in on manufacturing a bit, so what we're sort of seeing in manufacturing is sort of the machines become the sort of producers and people become the value creators. And so I think the role of people and skills going forward in this more digitalised version of life and the economy, the role of people and skills is as important as it's ever been. So I don't buy into that argument about a less people-oriented future and a more automated, less people. I actually think, but what it does mean is that the jobs that we've had will shift and have been shifting, as that data from the National Skills Commission has rightly revealed, and will continue to shift. So what that means is then the relationship is sort of between knowledge, skills, value creation, all those sorts of things also shifts. And I think there's no doubt that there's a much higher skilled conversation occurring. A lot of the new jobs in manufacturing will be critical, analytical, data-related skills. The importance of those foundation skills and the trade skills will always remain important, but they will work in conjunction or in partnership with other skills and other machines in the workplace. So we've got to continue to rethink that. And we've also got to continue to think about how we revitalise and continuously refresh skills. So the speed of reskilling, and I think we probably need to adopt the language of skills deepening, will be much shorter. And in fact, some of the companies that I think are quite leading around this would basically identify that they effectively reskill their workforce basically on a 2-year cycle. That doesn't mean everything changes. It means building and deepening on from the base they've got. And a lot of that is about the relationship between knowledge, skills and application. And if you actually then, I'm jumping around a bit here, sorry about that, but if you actually think about it and you think about what are some of the core underpinning and thinkings about the revised qualification framework, it is the opportunity to reframe those important things so we can actually deliver what's required for the whole vet system, but also the manufacturing industry, and keep everyone deeply engaged and deeply skilled in the current ways, but new ways, and in an ongoing way. And a lot of that will be much more conceptual, critical, analytical, building on the technical. It's your turn to be on mute.
I don't know how I did that. Sorry about that. Certainly touch on some of the opportunities there. Certainly the job shifting and people being the value creators. I certainly agree with that. But for those of us actually building those skills, whether it's employers or people doing the training development, what will help us build the right skills for industry and individual enterprises?
Well, I mean, ultimately, industry and individual enterprises need to own that answer. But I think the best way to own it, because they're the ones who will have the need, and that's got to drive it. But the best way to get to that answer is to do it in partnership, whether it's with, it should be with the training providers and all of the players in the equation, industry associations, unions, the lot. We all need to be part of this solution, and bring different solutions to the table. So we don't need a one size fits all. We need many more flexible solutions. We need a much more adaptive system so that we can plug things in and out more quickly. That leads you to the micro-credential discussion. I don't think I've had a discussion this year about any vet reform without talking about micro-credentials. I actually think it's become a label for shorter credentials. That doesn't replace the importance of qualifications, but what it's saying is the mix needs to change. The other thing I think we need to do is look at collaborative partnerships, and that is looking at sort of, innovation hubs, industry hubs. There's examples around now, but there's many, many more. I can't believe how many conversations I have around that sort of stuff. And so these are about skills-based innovation, collaborative hubs, often that occur outside training providers. So it might occur in an industry park. One we're talking about is a local government initiative around Industry 4 in a business precinct, all these sorts of things that all of the players come to the table, they collaborate. It's a continuous ongoing conversation to address exactly what you're talking about, is Who needs to know what is it and how do we get there? And there is no answer that can just sort of land from above. Everyone's got to be in that journey of creating the answer, but it's absolutely got to be focused around real work, real jobs now and going forward. So think forward's not bad. Build on that. Sometimes that'll be a bit of a leap of faith. Sometimes we've got to be a bit brave what that might look for. We need flexible solutions around all of that so that it can be shorter and sharper and really meet those needs. We need to excite young people to come into this place to see a really great future around all of this so they can identify their future in amongst all of this stuff. Because manufacturing is absolutely already a core and critical part of the economy, but we see the revitalisation of manufacturing driven by skills as being even more important than it already is now.
Couldn't agree more, Megan. But unfortunately, we've run out of time. And I think we could all keep the conversation going for a lot longer, but I'm conscious that you probably have other things you need to get to. So thank you, Megan, and certainly agree, skills to enable real jobs and real work is certainly what we need to focus on. Just in conclusion, as you've heard, the government's various initiatives and budget commitments are far-reaching and impressive. This is a really important time for manufacturing in Australia. We have a federal government that is driving a top-down approach with important support to both manufacturing and skills development. IBSA Group is further responding to this and is going to be kicking off a series of webinars on this important topic to continue to drive those conversations so that we can help inform governments and industries to deliver those necessary jobs and skills that are needed. To be part of this, we'll be reaching out to you to register your interest. Finally, none of this would be possible without all of those in attendance today. Thank you all for making the time to join this event today. Have a good day and we'll speak to you all soon.